Noche UFC is in the books, and what a swirling high-octane night it turned out to be. From a 21-year-old debutante stealing the show early to a main event that detonated into a spinning elbow finish and a tense post-fight shove, this card served up exactly the kind of chaos fight fans live for. Let's walk through the whole ride, then circle back to the fireworks between Diego Lopes and Silva and the wave of reactions that came crashing in afterward. The main card cracked open with a thunderclap. Santiago Luna, stepping in on short notice for his UFC debut, met Kwang Lee and immediately found himself in trouble. Lee clipped him clean and had him wobbled, and for a beat it looked like the jitters of a first walk might swallow the 21-year-old whole. Instead, Luna settled, reset, and showed exactly why unbeaten prospects are dangerous even when they're green. He leaned into the pocket exchanges he knew Lee wanted, found his timing on the left hook, and detonated it at just the right moment. Lee fell, Luna surged, and the stoppage followed. Just like that, he's 7-0 and the kind of fresh name that gets matchmakers rubbing their hands together. The online pulse picked up fast. Luna got comfortable and sent brawn. Sheesh was the tone from one popular reaction, while others called it a wild opener and welcomed the kid to the show with a flood of respect. In the back, Luna's energy matched the performance, grateful for the stage, honest about the danger, and quietly proud of the way he took a bad moment and turned it into a defining one. If the opener was a thunderclap, Alexander Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira was a pressure cooker that hissed until it finally blew. Hernandez, who's quietly pieced together the best run of his UFC career, extended his streak to 4 with a second-round TKO that had a lot of people talking about the referee's timing. Ferreira ate several clean, unanswered shots in sequence before the wave finally crested. The finish felt inevitable, and when it came, Hernandez immediately talked about striking while the iron's hot, acknowledging he's known failure, dared big, and now wants to cash in while momentum rides with him. He even tossed a line toward Michael Chandler, which is a savvy move in a crowded lightweight picture. Say a big name out loud, and sometimes the door opens. Plenty of voices online agreed the stoppage could have come earlier, but the bigger takeaway was Hernandez's right hand doing serious work and the sense that he's found a groove with the team around him after years of trying to figure out the right formula. Kelvin Gastelum's night was equal parts polish and frustration. He got the win, unanimous decision over Dustin Stoltzfus, behind smart structure, measured pressure, and an obvious read on what his game plan needed to be. He also missed weight by a full 5 pounds and gave up a hefty slice of his purse, which colored everything else. Gastelum owned the situation afterward. Short notice, didn't get where he needed to be on the scale, bittersweet. The performance itself showed there's still quality there, that he can put rounds in the bank with a smart approach, that experience matters, but the weight issues keep following him like a shadow, and that's where the uncertainty lies. Where do you put a guy with that much ability if the scale keeps complicating the matchmaking? It's one of those lingering questions that can only be answered across the next few months with discipline and repeatable habits. Fans love watching him fight, but the numbers on Friday matter as much as the numbers on Saturday. Rafa Garcia versus Jared Gordon was a gritty, slow burn that paid off with a violent crescendo in the third. Gordon boxed sharp early and found a rhythm that had more than a few observers scoring the first 2 in his favor. Garcia, though, has that tough-as-nails Mexican fighter stubbornness. He stayed in the kitchen while it got hotter, mixed in grappling threats, and refused to go away. The fight swung on persistence as much as tactics. When Garcia began to layer his attacks, snatching at the neck, changing levels, and then hammering with elbows when the choke slipped, Gordon's foundation finally cracked. The late TKO capped a war that both guys can be proud of and underlined just how thin the margins are when top 30 lightweights collide. Respect poured in for Gordon's toughness, especially after word floated that he'd been banged up by a car the day before and chose to fight anyway, and for Garcia's ability to keep raising the pace until the opponent either matched it or wilted. David Martinez closed out the penultimate bout with a clean, unanimous decision over Rob Font, though the horn and the officiating gave everyone a minor heart attack. The round ended, the ref didn't hear it, and Font ate a few extra punches after the bell. Tense seconds. Cooler heads prevailed quickly, and the judges' scorecards made the right kind of headlines instead of the wrong kind. For Martinez, it's a meaningful scalp on a resume that's starting to take shape. For Font, it's back to the drawing board with the usual veteran realism about small mistakes making big differences. And then there was the main event, Diego Lopes versus Silva, a fight that arrived with built-in friction and delivered volatility from the opening bell. Lopes, who carried himself all week like a man intent on righting the ship, started fast. He got to his grappling, to dominant positions, to elbows that sliced. Round 1 felt like a 10-8 in spirit, if not on every card. Mount, heavy top pressure, opportunistic submission hunting, and a confident walk back to the corner. Still, Silva is cut from that classic Brazilian pressure striker cloth. He doesn't fold when it gets rough. He came out for the second throwing heat, riding balance on the edge of recklessness, and found plenty of chin. That stretch in the middle of the round where Silva landed in bursts had the crowd roaring and Lopes blinking, absorbing, recalibrating. The moment that will live on the highlight reels was born of that chaos. Silva stepped in behind his own heavy offense, and Lopes reading the rhythm, feeling the chase pivoted into a spinning back elbow that landed like a trapdoor opening. Silva crashed, the arena spiked, and Lopes poured on a torrent of follow-ups. You could count the clean shots, 1, 2, 5, 8, until the ref dived and dragged Lopes away with 12 seconds left in the frame. It was the kind of finish that flips narratives on their heads. The guy who looked rocked becomes the finisher. The aggressor gets punished for just one beat of overcommitment. People cried early for a minute, then held their breath when the replay showed just how many strikes got through. The stoppage felt exactly right on second look, which is one of those truths that make MMA so unforgiving. If you're hurt and not answering punches, you're on borrowed time. The adrenaline didn't walk out of the cage just because the fight was over. Lopes, hot and victorious, had words for Silva's corner. Silva, bloodied and staggered, took exception, shoved his stool, and pushed Lopes. For a flash, it looked like the simmer might boil again, but security body-checked the temperature back down. A few minutes later, the two men stood across from each other and, with a mix of exhaustion and professionalism, shook hands. Beef squashed, at least publicly. In the presser, Lopes let the message ring clear. Talk less, train more. He wasn't interested in letting the pre-fight chatter from Silva's side drift into the shadows unanswered. That single upturned finger in the moment was the exclamation point after the spinning elbow. The reactions poured in from fighters and analysts in waves. Dustin Poirier had picked Lopes beforehand, so did Bilal Muhammad, who made a cheeky bully nose nod to his own nickname. Mike Perry tipped his cap with a big win shout. Terrence McKinney pointed out the irony that Lopes ended it with a technique Silva himself had tried, hit him with his own move and called the scrap raw in the best way. Chris Weidman initially thought the stoppage was quick, then watched the replay and did the right thing by walking it back. Ariel Helwani's summary landed exactly where most fans' guts did. A bananas main event, a massive result, rough week for the fighting nerds, and a shove to top it off. Henry Cejudo was in full exclamation point mode, calling it fight of the year and stamping Lopes as that guy. Dan Iga kept it simple. That was crazy because sometimes that's all there is to say. Nassourdine Imavov jabbed at Silva's bravado with a talk less next time little man, which felt like a receipt on behalf of all the trash talk victims out there. Michael Bisping fired off a classic holy, what a fight, and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson nerded out on the technique and toughness. The elbow was pristine, and Lopes' chin and composure were something to behold, especially after eating some serious leather in the second. There's also the broader context this fight slots into. Gene Silva came in carrying the kind of momentum that makes a division nervous. 5 UFC wins, 5 finishes, a 13-fight overall streak. He's part of a surging Brazilian stable that's been one of the best stories of the year, and his teammates had staked their own claims in recent months. That's why some voices framed this week as a tough one for the group. Momentum stalled, bright lights exposing edges that still need sanded down. Losses have a way of teaching lessons no win can, and Silva learned a couple at once. Tempo control matters when adrenaline is screaming in your ears, and every risky step in the pocket has to be measured against a counter just like the one that ended his night. His post-fight shove wasn't his best moment, but the handshake afterward matters too. Fighters are proud. That pride sometimes spills when the blood is still hot. He's a threat at featherweight even today. Dangerous, explosive, flawed like every human in this sport, and the rebound fight will tell us everything about his ceiling. For Lopes, the narrative sharpening feels obvious. He's back in stride, the reel just got a new centerpiece, and the matchmakers have a fresh lever to pull near the top of the rankings. A performance like that puts you in the conversation for another big name immediately. Top 5 guy, main event slot, maybe even a short notice title eliminator, if the chessboard shifts just so. What made this win pop wasn't only the finish, it was the composure on the way there. Round 1 was dominant, round 2 got hairy, and instead of folding or getting reckless, he picked a shot few fighters even see in that moment, let alone land clean. Those are levels moments, the ones fighters talk about after sparring with champions when they realize speed and awareness are different currencies than power and volume. One thread that wove through the whole card was officiating and timing, when to stop a fight, when to let it ride, how to make sure the horn is heard, how